Before I get into the 6 bust-proof wide receivers in 2024 fantasy football, I just want to say this right out of the gate. I'm not a big safe guy when it comes to fantasy football. The only ways that I've won over 10 plus years of playing fantasy is by swinging for the fences on a lot of guys. Now, I will say, if you have access to get a guy like Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, or Breece Hall in your redraft league this year, then you probably do want to play it safe with some safer wide receivers that you know can't bust. And that's where these guys come in today. So that's what we're going through today. So go down there, drop a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. So the guys that we're going through today, they are not your wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2s in fantasy football drafts right now. We're not talking about getting guys like Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown. We're not talking about getting top 5 guys saying, oh yeah, they're bust proof. We're talking about guys who are going as wide receiver 2s and even later than that, and guys that I just don't believe are going to finish beyond where they're being drafted at as far as going down lower below their draft spot. The first guy really exemplifies exactly what I mean by bust proof because I'm talking about Devonte Smith of the Philadelphia Eagles here. Now, right now, he's the wide receiver 18 on Underdog. I don't think he'll get much lower, if at all, lower than that particular price right here. Now, let's go through the first 2 seasons of Devonte Smith's NFL career and in fantasy football right here. So as we know, Devonte Smith just signed a big extension this offseason with the Philadelphia Eagles. 3 years, $75 million. Gave us assurance, basically, that he's the wide receiver 2 there, even though we really didn't need it. Like, they were not, like, they had nobody else to go with wide receiver 2. They're not going with their draft picks this year. We all know that Devonte Smith is a very strong number 2 wide receiver in the NFL. And we also know that the Philadelphia Eagles offense, very efficient running, and Jalen Hurts has become more efficient throwing the ball over the last several seasons. Now, when you look at Devonte Smith and his last 2 seasons there, he had 112 targets last year on 136 targets in 2022. So he definitely did drop. You know, that's a decent drop right there, 24 target drop. And he only missed 1 game in 2023, so it's like there is a little bit of a drop there in his target share. But he's had the past 2 years over 1,000 yards receiving and 7 touchdowns as well. So as far as the steady production goes, that's all there for Devonte Smith. He's producing on a target basis, just like he did in 2022 and 2023. So when we're looking ahead to 2024, we're looking at a guy who's on an efficient offense with a wide receiver 1 who is so dominant that we know Devonte Smith is not going to see double coverage unless A.J. Brown misses a game or 2. That's the only way that Devonte Smith gets double coverage in 2024, is if A.J. Brown is out. Devonte Smith is going to have so many open lanes and he's going to face so much single coverage that even if he sticks at like that 115, 120 target radius right there, he's still going to wind up with a good 80 catches and over 1,100 yards in all likelihood in 2023. Now, he finished as the wide receiver 22 last year in half PPR format, and he was the wide receiver 10 in 2022 in half PPR format. So basically, what we're saying here is that the wide receiver 18 price point on Underdog with Devonte Smith, I don't see how he's going to finish below the wide receiver 18. I just don't, because when you look at everything right there, as long as he gets a little bit of target share back, I'm talking like a couple targets or even just plays another game, Devonte Smith is a top 20 wide receiver in all likelihood in fantasy football unless he misses time. And by the way, dude's only missed 1 game in his entire career in 3 years in the NFL. Devonte Smith is absolutely bust proof. And if you want to get in on drafting him, he's not my particular favorite target, to be honest with you, because like I said, I'm a league winning upside type of guy. But Devonte Smith, that being said, great draft target. Draft him today on Underdog using code FFN, where they will give you $250 free bonus cash to play with in there. So you can do pick'ems in there. You can also get in these awesome fantasy football drafts. Join today with the code if you have not signed up already. Now, the next guy that I'm talking about here is also a back-end wide receiver 2 pick. I don't think that this guy in particular has really any concerns. And honestly, I've drafted a ton of Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman, I've drafted him a bunch because I believe this is a guy who clearly has wide receiver 1 upside in fantasy, and he's being drafted as the wide receiver 24 right now on Underdog. So Michael Pittman, as many of us know, who have been playing fantasy football for the last 3 to 5 seasons, he's had a little bit of an up and down career in fantasy football. Like, you're just mapping out his 4 years in the NFL. Wide receiver 25 last year, wide receiver 27 last year, wide receiver 16 in 2021, and wide receiver 86 in 2020, his rookie year. So he's been a little bit all over the place, and I think that the expectations with Michael Pittman coming into his first, second, third year were probably higher than they should have been. But that being said, since his sophomore season in 2021, he's been nothing but good, and in addition to the fantasy finishes that he's seeing, his target share every year is going up. His target share went from 129 targets in 2021 to 141 targets in 2022, and then 156 targets in 2023. Now, do I personally think that number is going to go up again this year? I wouldn't be surprised because he's their clear wide receiver one, but even if it doesn't go up, if it sticks around 150, that's a wide receiver one in fantasy football type of numbers on a target basis right there. What he lacked last year, and the reason he was the wide receiver 25 is because he only had 4 touchdowns. Well, also the reason for that is because he had Gardner Minshew to deal with a quarterback. That's not even going to happen this year. He's got Anthony Richardson locked and loaded, and we don't even know if Anthony Richardson is going to be a good NFL quarterback for an entire season. But I can tell you this, the upside is always there with Anthony Richardson. So if it hits, Michael Pittman not only has a safe floor, he's got a much higher ceiling, because that's what he did last year with Gardner Minshew. 109 receptions on 156 targets and 1,152 receiving yards. Now, if you needed any more proof that he's the wide receiver one in Indianapolis, look no further than the contract that they gave him this offseason. They paid him. He's their wide receiver one. They've got Josh Downs behind him. They've got a lagging Alec Pierce behind him. And they got Adonai Mitchell, rookie out of Texas. Michael Pittman is not going to fight anybody for targets as that wide receiver one. So as far as getting a bust-proof guy, and in my opinion, somebody who has more upside than just being a bust-proof guy, Michael Pittman's a guy that you definitely want to look at in 2024. Now, the next guy on this list right here, we're getting into wide receiver 3 territory. And this is a guy who I hold very dearly to my heart, was on a bunch of my underdog teams last year that advanced in playoffs. Jaden Reed of the Green Bay Packers. I saw it with him last year. I see it with him this year, but I'm not as in love with the price, obviously, because I'm not getting him at the discount I got him last year. He's the wide receiver 34 on underdog right now, and I think that this one could be argued a lot of ways of why he's not a bust-proof guy. I can understand that argument for sure, because if you just look at the targets, the competition should be there in Green Bay. Like, you've got Romeo Doubs, who is never an elite wide receiver in fantasy football, but always gives you production because he's a very efficient guy in the red zone. You've also got a guy with Christian Watson, who is probably the most talented wide receiver in the room, but never has been able to finish a full season. And by the way, when he plays, not exactly the most consistent guy. Now you've got Dontavian Wicks in the mix as well. Dontavian Wicks showed well in his rookie season too last year. But the most versatile guy that Green Bay has is Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed, when you take a look at him and the offense that he's on and what he did last year as a rookie, he finishes the wide receiver 23 in fantasy football last year, and that was on 94 targets. And what cannot be overlooked is 11 attempts rushing. Now, 11 attempts rushing is not, like, that's not exactly moving the needle on a consistent basis. It's not like he's Deebo Samuel, right? Deebo Samuel gets like 40 attempts on the ground per year. But in his rookie year, that's what he got. With Green Bay's offense, how ingenuitive they are with coach Matt LaFleur, I could easily see that number being at least doubled this year, to where he gets 22 carries. And what if he gets 22 carries? Does 119 yards on the ground turn into 250 yards on the ground? Or does it turn into 5 touchdowns instead of 2? Jaden Reed is a guy that, yes, had 10 touchdowns last year. That's a lot of touchdowns. Not sure if we can count on that again. I think the involvement in the offense, continuing to be as involved as he was last year, and even more so, is what we can count on in that Green Bay offense. And Jordan Love is an ascending player. Ascending in that offense, coming into his second year as a full-time starter, where he was dominant in the back half of last year, including the NFL playoffs. So I just think that with the trajectory this team is on, the offensive efficiency that he sees on that Green Bay Packers team, and with the improvement that Jaden Reed as a player saw last year, I don't think that Green Bay can look at their wide receiver room and say that Jaden Reed is not their best guy. I think Christian Watson, I proved the point. Not only has he been injured, the guy's been inconsistent as well. They're not always happy with him. So even though he may have more physical talent than Jaden Reed does, which Jaden Reed is extremely talented, by the way, Jaden Reed was the better football player last year, and it showed on the field and in the numbers as well. Now, the next guy on this list right here, I think that Calvin Ridley is such a full circle moment for me particularly. So if you were with me last year when I had like 2,000 subscribers, Calvin Ridley was the guy I was actively saying, do not draft him. Do not draft Calvin Ridley because he was going so high in fantasy football drafts. And I think for the most part, I was right. If you took everything into account, I was really right on that. Well, guess what's different this year? The price. Everything about this one is so much more appealing. He's the wide receiver 35 on Underdog right now. Now again, when I talk about bust-proof wide receivers, I'm talking about guys who I don't think there's any way, unless there's an injury, that he finishes below the wide receiver 35. Calvin Ridley is not a guy that I particularly love. As I said in the intro, I don't love all these guys. What I do think is that there's no way they bust in fantasy football and they don't return the value on your draft. So just looking at Calvin Ridley's numbers last year, he was not the most efficient guy. Even though he did finish as the wide receiver 17 last year, it was very spotty. And there was a lot of weeks where he gave you nothing burgers. Now, I think that's going to be a factor in why people are just kind of off of Calvin Ridley this year. The one thing that always sticks out with me when I look at free agents on a new team, when you see a big contract like Calvin Ridley's, 4 years, $92 million, that's a big number, right? $92 million, that's a large contract for a wide receiver. Don't just look at that though. The guaranteed money is how you know for certain how often a player is going to get on the field, and if they're on the field, get opportunities. He got $50 million guaranteed. Over half of the value of the total contract was guaranteed for Calvin Ridley. This guy is their wide receiver one. That is wide receiver one contract written all over it. Yes, they have DeAndre Hopkins, but they did not give him close to this Calvin Ridley deal. Not even close. They have a wide receiver that has failed as a first-round pick, Treylon Burks. Read that he's probably going to be fighting for a roster spot based on how he does in special teams this year. And they've got Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd, solid number 3, but no more than that, and the contract as well proves that for Tyler Boyd. Calvin Ridley is their wide receiver 1. So basically what we're saying at this price point right here, wide receiver 35, is with Calvin Ridley, a lot of people are just saying, I don't believe that Calvin Ridley can return wide receiver 2 value in an offense that looks to be much more revamped this year with Will Levis and with an offense-first head coach. And they've made so many additions to that offense. The wide receiver room is different. The running back room is different. The quarterback, they're going in with a big arm quarterback who's got a lot of potential, but obviously has not shown quite as much as we want to yet. And the offensive line has been rebuilt as well. So I don't think that there's any way Calvin Ridley is a bottom 3 wide receiver in fantasy football. Again, unless there's an injury. On a points per game perspective, Calvin Ridley is probably going to be in that 11 to 12 range because you know he's going to get peppered with at least 8 to 9 targets per game in 2024. That's why he's bust-proof. Number 5, the next guy on the list right here, I am all over him. It shouldn't surprise you to hear me say this. And not only do I believe that Jordan Addison is bust-proof, I actually think he's got a very, very, very high ceiling. The reason he's definitely bust-proof is because he's the wide receiver 39 on Underdog. He's a wide receiver 4 in Underdog drafts. If you want to draft someone, draft Jordan Addison on Underdog today. Jordan Addison, the price just doesn't make sense. And I've discussed so much about this already this offseason. The number one thing, Jordan Addison coming off his rookie year, Jordan Addison had a tremendous rookie year. Wide receiver 21, and he did it on 108 targets and 911 receiving yards. Now, that might seem volatile, right? 10 touchdowns and was a top 25 wide receiver on 108 targets. I just did a video explaining why these types of wide receivers are actually a little bit dangerous in fantasy football. What we have to take into account, and I think that this is the counter argument for a lot of people, is, well, Justin Jefferson was injured last year. Yes, he was. Well, Jordan Addison was performing well with Justin Jefferson there. The other part that people say is, well, Kirk Cousins is no more. Well, Kirk Cousins missed about half that season last year, and he still did well. TJ Hawkinson, in addition, expected to miss a decent part of the start of the season at the very least. No timetable for return with him. Jordan Addison's the number 2 target easily, and again, with Devonte Smith, Addison's not going to see he's not ever going to see double coverage because of Justin Jefferson. I don't understand the Jordan Addison disrespect. I view it as total disrespect. This is a wide receiver coming into his second year on an offense, yes, with a rookie quarterback, potentially Sam Darnold, whichever way they want to go. But Jordan Addison has done nothing but show in his rookie year that he's going to improve in his second year because of the factors that he had to deal with last year as well. So Jordan Addison at the wide receiver 39 price. I don't understand how he can bust. I really don't. If I'm certain on anybody, it's Jordan Addison at his price. There is simply no way Jordan Addison busts below this price, and I think that the chances he finishes as a top 15 wide receiver are pretty high as well. The last guy on the list today, I have a gut feeling with this guy, and I don't have much to back it up with. Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey, the Los Angeles Chargers. Wide receiver 42 on Underdog. Who is Ladd McConkey? Ladd McConkey is a rookie wide receiver out of the University of Georgia, and from a film-loving guy like myself, I love Ladd McConkey. I think a lot of film guys in fantasy football world, they love Ladd McConkey. Now, if you're more numbers-driven, you won't love Ladd McConkey as much. Never was a 1,000-yard guy at Georgia. Not only that, he was just not very good based on numbers. I'm not going to dispute that. But I like to combine the best of both worlds. Ladd McConkey is a great route runner. You know who else is a great route runner for the Los Angeles Chargers? Keenan Allen. And he's not there anymore. And Justin Herbert, by the way, loved Keenan Allen because he was always open. Short, middle, deep. Because he's a great route runner. Ladd McConkey has reportedly picked up the offense in Los Angeles very well this offseason so far. Again, I've got no numbers to back this up. I understand the Chargers are going to be run first this year. But if you don't think that Justin Herbert's going to get more efficient with less throws, I don't know what to say. Justin Herbert is a very good NFL quarterback. Big arm, and he's going to be more efficient this year with just Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman as their coach. And you just factor in the other 2 wide receivers that are there. Quentin Johnston, Josh Palmer. Who's really scaring you in that wide receiver room? Neither one of those guys are great route runners, which means they won't be target hogs. Ladd McConkey's going to be a target hog. So at that wide receiver 42 price, I think the chance that he's a wide receiver 2, pretty high. I don't think that his upside is great. That's actually why I've kind of been a little bit reluctant to take him in underdog best ball drafts, because I don't think he has a ton of big play upside. But in a redraft league, if you're looking to fill that flex spot with a wide receiver that you can get very late in the draft, Ladd McConkey is that guy, because I don't see any way he busts in 2024 fantasy football. So let me know what you think of the guys on this list in the comments below, and who your favorite wide receiver value is heading into 2024.